Hey all, welcome to Circle of Tone. Today, Prong. Prong. I don't think there's a band that has more influence on the heavy hitters from everything past 1990. All right? Or name a genre. They even beat Pantera to the punch, and Pantera said they were an influence when it comes to groove metal. When Korn came out, they said that Prong were a huge influence. Their biggest hit, the first thing everybody ever heard from Korn, was a Prong riff. Da-dan, 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 da-da-da-da. It's just slowed down from what I was just playing. Nine Inch Nails said Prong were a huge influence on them. We're talking heavy hitters, man. The biggest bands post grunge all said that Prong were a huge influence. And they get no credit. You never hear any YouTubers talking about Prong. Prong would come up only on forums, only if you mentioned the Marshall valve state. So let's talk about that. I didn't find any actual proof that they used a valve state on the album with Snap Your Fingers. Previous albums actually predate the valve state, like being manufactured. There's loads of accounts of them playing them live. And it does kind of, to me, it sounds bigger. It sounds bigger than a valve state with like a metal zone or a heavy metal 2-pedal in there because it's got that sizzle. So I actually don't know what they use. I didn't try and recreate it. I can't because I didn't use the gear that they used because I didn't know it. You know, everyone says valve state, but I didn't see any proof on it. Maybe they did. I just used the JCM 800 with the best boost for tight modern playing. It has a built-in gate. Is, in my opinion, the Zuta Tri-X. Like, I always make fun of NAMM. There hasn't been anything decent released in NAMM since the Kemper came out. I remember telling my friends about, oh, you got to watch out for the Kemper. It actually does the trick. It does, you know, the terrible close micing, modern metal, mastered sound that all guitarists are looking for is in the Kemper. The public hate that sound. But yeah, if you want to put an SM57 on a vintage 30 and close mic it and have your teeth rattle on edge for the whole album and not dig it and not get any vibe in it, go ahead, get yourself a Kemper. I gotta talk shit. This is Circle of Tone, bitch. Let's talk about the modern metal sound. Is there a band that influenced more heavy hitters when it comes to the modern sound than Prong? Prong was one of the early adopters to that super tight, down-tuned, I mean, it was C in 1990. Jesus Christ. Nobody was doing it back then, you know? I mean, Korn were the first band to ever use a mass-produced 7-string. But before that, you had Tommy tuning down 6 strings, you know? So yeah, huge influence. They weren't a huge influence on me. I was more of a Fear Factory type. I liked it a bit faster. Sabbath. Forbidden. Exuma. Whiplash, the band Whiplash. Dude, when Ticket to Mayhem came out, holy shit, what an album. Talk about actual power in the voice, screaming till his vocal cords got all fucked up. We're talking actual rage and speed and just precision and chaos, you know? And Tommy Victor, he was a sound technician in CBGBs. The CBGBs had so many massive bands go through. They're not just the metal or the hardcore guys. And the tinfoil hat person in me half suspects that most of the bands that came out of CBGBs were kind of psyops. Massive bands cut their teeth in CBGBs. It can't be a coincidence. It must have been like the cocaine hub or something. I'm going to be doing a movie review soon on Harley Flanagan, the bass player from the Cro-Mags. He has a movie coming out. He has been through the cancellation ringer recently. From all accounts, really, if you dig into it, he was set up. He was set up to get cancelled by this anarchy group. They set him up. But good times, man. good times, right? Everybody's being cancelled with no proof, and nobody reads past the headlines on some of these accusations. You know, it was fun for a lot of people to say X, Y, Z about certain people when half of them were not true. A lot of them were true. You know, I'm looking at you, pop punk, emo core. I'm looking at you guys. There's a lot in there. A lot of the 60s, 70s, and 80s bands that were huge, a lot of them were kind of industry plants. There was a lot of bands that came out of Laurel Canyon, they had a lot to do with the government and hand in hand with lobbyists pushing certain types of music to get certain drug legislation passed and things like that. So the more kids were doing drugs, the more hippies were on TV, the more money that weapons manufacturers, war on drugs, for-profit prisons, and, you know, during grunge, we were guarding poppy fields, which produce heroin, for reasons in Afghanistan. Okay, and all of a sudden, grunge chic was on the catwalks. All of a sudden, heroin chic was on the catwalks in all the fancy magazines. All your favorite bands were on smack. It was coming in from Afghanistan via... So I have half a feeling that CBGBs was a little bit of the mafia were involved with the music business. I know from personal experience, okay? And I think that was a bit of a hub for a lot of the grey, brackish waters where the drug dealers would mix with the record executives, you know, suitcases full of cocaine, heroin, that type of thing. There were certain people that popped up in the grunge scene, like the singer of Hole, who were pretty much allowed to deal with impunity. Back in those days, if you get caught with weed, you get life in prison if it's your third strike. Because of Biden. We're going on too much of a tangent. So Prong had a huge hand in the influence thrash, groove metal, nu metal, industrial metal, rubbed shoulders with the influences of the influencers. So Killing Joke bassist Raven played bass on Snappy Fingers. I've done Killing Joke in the past. Ted Parsons ended up, the drummer, he ended up in Godflesh, you know? He ended up in Buckethead. You want to hear? I'm doing Buckethead soon, okay? The crazy guitarist, the skillful guitarist, Skillage in the Village. But the hype Buckethead, all right? If you want to know a weird thing about Buckethead, I'm going to say it in my next video. It gets weird, man, with him, when it comes to the influence he had on A-lister celebrities. And he was barely putting out demos at the time. We're talking A-listers rubbing shoulders with Buckethead. He had such an effect on the underground and the scene and the sleazy underbelly of Hollywood and the rest of it. It's weird, man. Yeah, so Parsons was in The Swans, Killing Joke himself. He was in Killing Joke too. So it wasn't just Tommy that was influential, you know? Tommy Victor he went out of his way when it came to Snappy Fingers to do more danceable beats in underground metal. You know, he was such a visionary when it came to this. He said he didn't want to be another Master of Puppets. He didn't want to be another one of these thrash bands because it was the peaks had already been reached when it came to his genre. Because a lot of the early stuff was pretty thrashy. You know, he started off in hardcore punk band, which was actually really good. It was good shit. We got the fight to make it real. Don't wanna die, 'cause I've been down here. I just want life is fun, then we don't have the fun. I just want life fun, what doesn't do the fight? I'm done today, fucking my age. a surprising amount of underground hardcore creatures end up in EDM, you know? And a lot of visionaries start off pretty hardcore underground, and then all of a sudden...
I'll show you this tattoo of a New York hardcore band, straight hardcore band right there in the middle of my back.
GB.
Yeah, that's Gorilla Biscuits.
All right.
Yeah, so that's some New York City hardcore right there.
And then you get Snappy Fingers, which was huge. I think they were on Beavis and Butthead and everything.
Yes.
If you get their seal of approval, you go through the stratosphere. Same thing happened with White Zombie, another band that was influenced by Prong. So yeah, I think when it comes to groove metal, I mean, Helmet had a big hand in it. You know, it was bands like Helmet and Prong that really did start the ball rolling on modern metal. I think all roads lead to Carcass when it comes to the guitar nerd modern metal thing. But when it comes to the early, huge Limp Bizkit sound, and then, you know, Gent took that to be even bigger, and now you have fucking deathcore spinning its wheels in its death throes again. How many times has that come and gone?
Slow the breakdown even more. Bring the BPM to 7.
Wait, half time to 70 BPM?
Nope. 7.
It's time for war! Man, this is amazing!
Yeah, this is so brutal right now.
Yeah, I can't wait to show my uncle's dad.
Your uncle's dad?
Yeah, he's pretty old, but he loves metal.
No, I mean, like, are you just talking about your grandpa?
Potato, I guess. It's the same thing.
Not really. It's just weird to refer to your grandpa as your uncle's dad. I mean, don't you think it'd be strange if I referred to you as my uncle's nephew's friend?
Man, that was so brutal. How far can we take this?
Okay. I say we just take everything we've done so far and go all the way with it.
Awesome. Okay, well, what BPM should the ending be now? 1?
Nope. BPM doesn't even apply anymore.
1 BPH?
Nope.
1 BPD?
1 BPW.
1 beats per week? It's time to state a declaration of war, which is a formal declaration issued by a national government indicating that a state of war exists between that nation and another! This song is going to continue playing on the second channel for the next few weeks. So subscribe there if you want to keep listening.
As the 90s progressed, metal got a bit weird. You know, it started to just, as soon as Pro Tools got into all of the studios, rock and metal lost its edge because everybody was chasing these huge sounds, but it didn't have the...
A lot of people say, oh, you can't hear any difference between tape and digital nowadays.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Well, there's a huge difference. And the difference is really that tape machines are fucking up the sound in a wonderfully musical way, and digital is not. When I first started working more with digital recording, I'd try and EQ things, and I'd try to compress things, like, none of this works. Try and boost high end, it sounds harsh. Like, what happened? It must be messing up the sound, but it wasn't.
That was the problem.
Yes, it's vastly more accurate, but what the tape machines do to the sound is so beautiful. It sort of rebalances the harmonics. Transient peaks get converted from a narrow collection of frequencies that are really loud for a very brief moment, and it spreads them out over all these harmonic overtones that gives this sensation of it being brighter, but more pleasing on the ear at the same time. Digital always had this quality to me of like being dull and harsh at the same time.
Right.
It's like, nicely done, Digital. Great job on that dull, harsh thing.
It didn't have the oomph. The same thing happened to Fear Factory. Fear Factory on tape were huge. You know, yes, they were still stuck to a click on tape. You know, they had the atomic clock on drums, that helps. But now, just doing it purely digital, they've lost that thing. They've lost that soul. All the bands, like Slayer went to Pro Tools, lost all of their soul. I'm telling you, the DAW does not sound like tape. It doesn't smoosh the top end. It doesn't have the excitement that happens when you pump, when you overload tape. It doesn't have the sheen in the treble. So it's when I look back on Prong, when I look back on Heartwork, when I look back on Helmet, it's bittersweet for me because it was the end of an era of spit and sawdust when it came to rock and metal. And then guitar nerds took over, drum replacement took over, on rails, vanilla sausage. The digital audio is like too much information. You hear a pin drop. That means you can hear how scratchy a vintage 30 speaker is. If you mic'd up Jimi Hendrix today in Pro Tools with an SM57 or even use the same mics you used back in the past with a greenback speaker, Marshall, cranked, all right, with a fuzz face and single coils, that would take the enamel off your teeth with the shrill fucking treble, would kill you. But because it was tape and because it had mountains of old compressors and old inefficient equipment between him and the desk, it just tamed all the highs. And it turned it into this wonderful just sheen of perfection, you know? So we need to go back to tape, which sucks because it's so expensive and the machines are so hard. It's like not, rock and metal isn't easy. People are looking for all these fucking shortcuts. And for what? You're going to waste your time. You're going to waste your time learning all this shit. I'm telling you, from a victim. I wasted my time on it only to find out. I was an early, I realized early in the Guitar Forum days that it wasn't working. I realized that these bands were better than a lot of the luminaries that I loved back in the day. Way better songs, better playing, but they lost that connection through the technology. They lost the spit and sawdust, the vibe, what's in the hearts of a lot of rock and metal fans. They do like imperfections. They like realism. They like it real.
But they're both kind of out of tune a little bit. When I actually play the mix, it sounds amazing. You don't even notice those pitch discrepancies.
We know how fake a lot of these bands are. We know it's not true. And if it is, it's copycat. So then it's contrived. And we were like, I don't know, man. So we switch off. We listen to the old shit, you know? So it's a cautionary tale with Prong, you know? The influence that it put out was amazing. I mean, I wasn't a huge nu metal fan, but I appreciate how many normies it brought into the scene, you know? Because that's what a thriving underground is only as big as the mainstream. And right now, mainstream is in the toilet. People think that it's huge right now because of Sleep Token and how they're number one on the Billboard chart. They're nowhere near number one on the Billboard chart. They're not even in the top 40. All right, they're in the rock chart. It's completely different being number one in the rock chart. They are not rubbing shoulders with the big guns. Okay, just because Knock Loose goes onto Jimmy Kimmel, it doesn't mean that we've made it. All right, nobody watched it. They all fast forwarded to the part where Poppy comes in. I can show you the proof of that. Nobody knows that song. They only know the one bit that Poppy comes in because it's a TikTok meme. Look at me complaining, not even talking about the band Prong, because honestly, there isn't much information on them, apart from it's something that I think needs to be talked about when it comes to production and that type of thing. So yeah, my version, I like the sound of it and everything, but it doesn't have the vibe. Maybe if I had Raven on bass, maybe if I had tape, maybe if I had, I think my right hand is okay on it, but the timing was off in a few spots. I don't have time to, go through it all. So yeah, Vanilla Sausages, hey, roll up. I'm your specialist. Thanks to my patrons of Tone. You guys are awesome. No signups recently. I put out a Rammstein video, which did really badly. I thought that would do well, but, I didn't talk in it. I just played. It's just a cover, but hey, yeah, no views. Oh, well. On to the next one. Hopefully Prong will do a bit better. All right, boys. Hope you like that. I say boys because it's a sausage fest out there when it comes to my statistics. Let me know in the comments who you'd like me to cover next. And if you have information on what Prong actually used on that era in the studio, it might have been, it may very well have been the Valve State. It was tight enough, that's for sure. But yeah, if you know any information, let me know. All right, boys. See you next time. Circle of Town.